Hello, my name is Taha Hamid, and today I will be discussing an analysis and reflection of the beer game supply chain simulation. So, the topic of discussion here is the bullwhip effect. This can be defined as the demand distortion that travels upstream in the supply chain from the retailer through the wholesaler to the distributor and finally to the manufacturer due to the variance of orders which may be larger than that of sales. So, what are the causes of the bullwhip effect? Well, for starters, we have delivery lead time. When the lead time is longer, the order rate of the supply chain system fluctuates, and the bullwhip effect phenomenon becomes more evident. Next, we have order batching. Members of the supply chain are constantly updating their demand forecast in order to fulfill incoming orders. In addition, members of the supply chain either round up or round down the quantity of orders needed, and this is slightly due to the lack of communication along the chain. Next, we have the price and sales discount. Price fluctuations have impacts on the bullwhip effect as well. This can be seen through discounting, resulting in larger quantities of purchases. This can cause high inventory stock and create more inventory costs, or have low inventory stock with more back orders due to less inventory. So, how does this relate to the beer game simulation? Well, when playing the beer game simulation, the bullwhip effect is portrayed when the retailer becomes highly reactive to demand. When the outgoing orders would increase, I would notice an increase in demand. As a result, I would order a high quantity and amplify expectations around that quantity. This high quantity order creates a domino effect along the supply chain. So the distributor may respond differently to my high quantity order, and he may expect a bigger order than what I asked for due to the increase in demand. Finally, the manufacturer also notices the increase in demand and will continue amplifying that number up to an even bigger number. This causes issues throughout the supply chain, and throughout the bullwhip effect in my simulation, I would order too much because the order numbers that I asked for would get inflated. Well, what techniques can be adopted for mitigating the bullwhip effect? Well, the number one technique that can be adopted for reducing the bullwhip effect is having better communication among the supply chain. With effective communication, the domino effect will have a less likely chance of occurring. And since communication will be apparent, the retailer and the manufacturer will be on the same page, and they will both have an idea of how many orders are truly needed to fulfill their needs, without increasing or decreasing their inventory stock. Another technique is by having stronger forecasting methods. With stronger predictions, there will be less inventory waste and no backlog orders among orders due to the forecasting calculations. While playing the beer game myself, my results interpreted that 82% of my session time, at least one of the stakeholders had a backlog. The retailer, which was me, was out of stock for 8 weeks, so 16% of the time my beers weren't available for sale. By using one of the techniques provided in the slides, I could have strategized a way to have less backlog throughout my session. While there are many risks of incurring the bullwhip effect, my recommendations are reducing the lead time. The main concern of the bullwhip effect is the lead time, and by potentially reducing the lead time and delays, the reduction of the order to delivery time can significantly reduce the risk of the bullwhip effect. The quicker the materials move throughout the supply chain to become finished products, the less inventory is accumulated. Next, we have improving communication. A strong recommendation for managers is that they must improve communication through the supply chain. By having more frequent information sharing and ensuring communication is accurate along the supply chain, the quantity of orders will be consistent with what the retailer asks for. In addition, as a manager, you must constantly be evaluating your inventory levels. By managing inventory levels, you can determine your inventory costs, whether you have too much supply or too little supply for incoming orders. Lastly, as a manager, a recommendation, you could reduce your order sizes and offer stable forms of pricing. By reducing order sizes, managers can calculate how to respond to market activity with the volatility of demand between orders. This can result in having less inventory costs overall. Now, moving on to my emotions and experiences of the beer game simulation. Well, my emotions were all over the place after playing the beer game simulation for the first time. I became very frustrated as my backlog orders grew due to my failure to enter a large number of outgoing orders. At first, I assumed that orders would arrive once a week. I did, however, discover that there is a time lag between orders. For example, if the incoming order was 8 and I entered the number 12 as an outgoing order, it would take 2 full weeks for all 12 of my supply to arrive in my warehouse. Sometimes only half of the supply arrived and other times it would arrive in full. And almost every other time the number would change. So throughout my first run, I was frustrated, angry, and confused. So my total cost after the first one was around $37,500. And after doing some research, I discovered that having extra beer on hand is preferable to having a backlog. For inventory costs, each stock is worth $5 a unit, whereas each backlog is worth $25 a unit for backorder costs. So as a result, my second run, I played it again to change my strategy. However, I discovered that the second run resulted in a higher cost than my first run. I got around a score of 42,500. I discovered that having too much inventory can be very costly in the long run. Then I decided to alter my strategy once more. This was extremely frustrating because I knew I could do better. All I needed to do was figure out the right strategy and how to implement it. Finally, for my third and final run, I began calculating how many orders I should place each week. I would start by calculating the number of outgoing orders and adding my previous week's inventory to the incoming inventory. I would then add my previous week's back order to the new order I created to account for the previous week's orders. After implementing this strategy, this allowed me to keep a significant amount of stock on hand without causing too many back orders. As a result, I was pleased with my final score of 19,285 as a total cost. Overall, I used various strategies to raise my score, and I changed my behavior after learning how the system works. Yes, it was very difficult at first because I had no experience. However, once I grasped the concepts and the gist of how the supply chain operates and the bullwhip effect, it became much easier overall. As a result, these are the works cited that I used to discuss my analysis and reflection of the beer game supply chain simulation.